Yes. So we're all. I need all the time.
I know that.
Do they still get breaks? Or has that been abolished?
It's up to you. Oh, great one.
Okay.
Oh,
They may have grudgingly,
what?
but not cheerfully. That's not good though.
Hi. Do you want 20 after or quarter after?
Whatever the people want. I want to follow the will. I am but their servant.
Frank, do you ever feel like you need to put your shovel?
Not considering what Bride do, I don't think he's fine.
They've got 2 minutes.
Okay, I know.
But yeah, 20 after?
20 after I think works.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
works.
All right. Well, good afternoon. I need to keep this a little further away, apparently. Well, first of all, I want to welcome any new members to OLLI, and of course, welcome back to everybody that's taken this class previously. If there are new members to OLLI, I do apologize in advance for my behavior. But anyway, as always, my first request, and well, I don't know if request is proper or demand, but please turn off your cell phone, okay? I really hate to make people sit in the corner wearing a dunce cap. So anyway, tomorrow, right here on this stage, we have a very exciting Wisdom Wednesday. That is Send the Alabamians with Nimrod Frazier, and that is in regard to service of Alabama soldiers, doughboys, I might add, in World War I, actually 100 years ago this year. So that should be a very exciting one, and that's from 2:30 to 4. Now, near and dear to my heart, next Monday, we have trivia time. All OLLI members are invited, and this is the first trivia session of the spring. That will be at the Church of Christ, and it will be from 11:55 to 12:40. This is we've changed it a little bit up to make it a little bit easier for you to get there from your previous class, and we will do our very, very best to make sure that you get out in time so you can get to your next class. So that's really important. Also, in regard to trivia, we have tried to make our questions even more fun than they were in the past, with very, very tight and concise answers. So this should be a lot of fun. And speaking for the trivia team, all we have to offer you is blood, toil, tears, and sweat. And for the participants, they will answer questions on the beaches. They will answer questions on the landing ground. They will answer questions in the fields and the streets. They will answer questions in the hills. They will never surrender. And the winners, this will be their finest hour. And by the way, my wife will be providing the winners some free chocolate chip and pecan cookies, so please come next Monday, and we promise to have a great time for everybody in regard to trivia. Now, without further ado, I present the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Joseph Kicklighter.
Welcome back, everyone, and we are now down to 90 hardcore members. And I thank those who wanted 10-minute breaks. I don't know what they wanted, but their demands were too great. and you will still get your 5 minutes, so no complaints. But there'll be no extensions. So then if you have a strike or something in mind, don't bother, because it's not even 6, 5, that's it. Because I have a lot to tell you about. I trust I know Janet did. You saw the syllabus, didn't you? Got it right there. If you have the syllabus, Frank, didn't you have them up there for everybody?
Yes, and I was personally handing them out.
Personally, he was doing this as part of his laborious tasks as his responsibilities. And you may want to read some of that material before class. The sections are relatively short. They give you just enough to give you a sense of what we'll be talking about. So I think it's worthwhile reading it and being aware of it. Even if you haven't had the previous class, I think enough will be clear through the reading and through what I have to say that you will be aware, even if you haven't been to a lot of old movies, which of course is part, I fear, of our misconceptions of the Roman Empire, because it's not nearly as pretty as Hollywood made it, believe me. It is known, of course, as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, the longest lasting such era in history as far as we are aware. Now, how do you make a peace? Well, of course, the answer is to keep having wars. There is a paradox there, but one of the great historians said it best. They created a desert and they called it a peace. And that's why we use such terms in wartime as peacekeeping missions and the like. The Roman Empire, in order to maintain its empire, will be rather constantly at war with this group or the other, as we shall see. It was led by an interesting array of individuals. I call them interesting. I'll leave that to your own judgment as I tell you more about them. But I defy any of us, including myself, to be able to name all of them from, say, Augustus to Diocletian. Now, many of us can do, I guess, Washington to Trump, but this other business, I don't believe even the hardest of memorizers could do. And if you can, I admire you. Or maybe you can even do the popes, from Peter to Francis. Again, Carol, great. Oh, no, you say no? Okay, just check. But anyway, there's a lot of them. And it's going on. The course, I hope to take us away by the 6th century after Christ. So settle back. We've got a lot. Think 6 times 90. That's how many minutes virtually I'll be talking. Okay, scary, isn't it? But you get your breaks, though. So you still have your breaks, so you get a subtraction from that. Octavian, you will remember, was the founder of this Roman Empire, but I don't think he would have liked to have been called that. He would have preferred to be known for many reasons, living and avoiding assassination and other potential problems, basically be called a leader of the Republic. And this is how he wanted to be known and regarded. You'll remember in our last session together, we more or less noted that when he became leader of the Republic, he was always anxious to keep up all of the institutions of the past, to make people feel as if I'm the restorer. Now things will be like they used to be, and I'm just one of you. Well, it worked for him. You can see how long he would lead this Roman Empire. 27 BC to AD 14 is quite a long time if you think about it. And he lasted through, as we're going to see, a lot of goings on. And this, of course, is part of that stability after almost a century of civil war. You remember, those of you who were with me last time, how we talked about Marius and Sulla and Pompey and Caesar. If I gave a pop quiz right now, no, you'd make A+, right? Yeah. So, no. And maybe an oral and a written. Ooh, yeah. But the idea being, of course, that you just go, it's like one after another taking the generals. Now they've got peace under Augustus. So what if he is a little authoritarian? I mean, he doesn't come out and say it. It's not like a big sign, I am a dictator, get down and worship me. He always says, I'm just one of y'all, and I'm just glad that we can all, and y'all love Daddy, and I did too, and Julius Caesar. I just love Daddy, and you did too, and so we all miss him, that kind of thing. Apparently, that was very good technique. The character then seems to be one of a master manipulator, a great supervisor of individuals, someone who could bring great confidence, and certainly someone who could ride the tides of political differences. On the other hand, there couldn't be too many political differences because most of the people who had opposed him were all dead. So that helps cut down on the opposition, doesn't it? And so you're thinking about people who are survivors, and they're going to say, this living thing is great. So, Hart, Octavian, it's like, let's just basically get along with him, and so they did. His settlement was basically the restoration of the republic. He's never going to say, well, it's a new time, let's drop all the old ways. That's just so un-Roman, it's unbelievable. You couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Jet age, it's a new day, we got to move on. No. We've got to love the ancestors, we've got to be like them, and so forth and so on. It's very much the idea of the restoration, and that's what I'm here for, to help you with it. Now, it starts, you remember when he took over Egypt, and Cleopatra and Mark Antony were no more, because that really brought him the end of his enemies, or at least those who were overt. Nobody else was going to say anything, right? So they wanted to live. And so he has Egypt now for his own. I don't think anybody's going to disagree. The people of Egypt will naturally declare him divine. Oh, surprise. Now, when he is declared a god in Egypt, he's going to say, now, I appreciate it. I love being a god for you all. It means a lot to me. It means a lot, I think, to all the family, that kind of thing. But I'm not going to be a god anywhere else. And they go, shucks, why? Well, I don't think the people would deal with it real well. It's great in Egypt to be a god on earth. But the rest of the empire, son of God. You can be a god when you're dead too, but not yet, okay? You're working on it, so you're God to be. And that's what he will do. Because if he had tried the God thing now, said, well, if it works, worked in Alexandria, Let's see how it'll play in Rome. No, we're not ready. No prime time. We give those local, the roadshow companies, it works there in Alexandria, God comes to town, yeah, that kind of thing. So it'll be great in Egypt, but not in Rome. And here is what he'll have. The textbooks always call it the veiled dictatorship because it means you can't come out and say it, but everybody knows. And so, you can't like hang out with him because he went to the Senate, like he was a senator. And you can't say, you're really like an authoritarian figure, aren't you? You're a dictator. I think he would not like it. I think you're supposed to treat him like one of the guys, and everybody sort of greets him. His toga was not even, it was handmade. I mean, it was just regular. Like we'd say today, off the rack. It's sort of seconds, don't they call it? I mean, it's not like something that was, ooh, look at that toga. No, Mr. Inconspicuous. That was the whole idea. He lived in a home that, any well-to-do person could live in. In other words, it's not like a shack, but it's not beyond anyone else. And all of this is to try to make people assume that he's one of them. Some of his titles are, of course, all legitimate Republican titles. He was a consul, one of the two executives, until he finally decided, maybe they won't like it if I keep using consul. So he had decided, some of you will remember, that he got up before the Roman Senate and said, I have taken care of this during the Civil Wars, but it's now time for the Roman Senate and people to take back their role. And they go, no, please continue to lead. And he said, okay, but only if you all will do your parts too. We've all got big jobs to do. So he will give that up, but he'll get some nice other things, alternatives. Proconsul, which means sort of like a lot of us, consul emeritus. He'd been consul, and now he's sort of like consul of consuls. Everybody sort of bows. It's not like, they're out. Back in that day, the old were venerated, were considered very high and mighty. So in the Senate and places like that, as proconsul, he was highly esteemed. Now, as tribune, you'll recall this has a position with popular connotations. And we've heard many a politician, or at least I have, say this kind of thing. I'm for the people. Yes, about September, starting September till early November. I'm for the people. I'm fighting the big interest. Okay. Well, that's Octavian/Augustus during his tribune campaigns. And you think, I don't think your record proves that, sir. I don't think you. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, people know what they're supposed to say. It's like a script, isn't it? I mean, it's not like, gee, let's examine the full record and see if you really are devoted to the people. Well, they thought he was, and that's good enough. So proconsul for the uppers, and tribune for most of the folks, and of course in charge of the religion, the official religion. I have a lot more to say about that on a subsequent lecture, but this one, just to know that the Roman religion has a kind of establishment, and as Pontifex Maximus, high priest, he is head of that. And it is not without interest that that title will be passed on to popes in other times. But that, again, is subject for another talk. Augustus and Princeps essentially guarantee nothing, really. Augustus sounds mighty good. It's a nice month. It's hot. And if you refer to someone as being august, something I would like to have been when I was young, venerable, noble, lofty, you know, all of that. And as far as Princeps, basically just sort of first among equals. That's what I consider it. He didn't want anything more than that because he didn't want anyone concerned about him in the sense of having too much power. Now, he is the Son of God. He will accept remember, no God, please, no God. I can't be a God. It's just, but I'm really close. And Daddy is up there watching. They had developed, funny thing about that, I guess they got him a nice fresh toga to get buried in because old Julius Caesar didn't look so good after that Senate action. But let's face it, we have in Rome, as we did in the Soviet Union, what we call historical revisionism. In other words, when the Roman school children come along, teacher, what happened to Julius Caesar? Oh, Julius Caesar went to heaven, and now he's helping the other gods rule. He's one of them. He has a new name, and he's hanging out, and they love to have him, and they're all crazy about him. You know, children are so believing. So, yes, the new books assumed the divinity of Julius Caesar. And there was no mention of the ugliness in the Senate. And you can believe that Brutus and Cassius didn't get in. They weren't filling the blanks on their final exam. But the god Julius, a.k.a. Quirinus, that was his god name. You got a new god name when you become a god. So that's kind of nice. So, here she is, Livia. You ask yourself, what do Roman women of power do in this day? Well, they tell the men what to do. They cannot do it directly, so this is the alternative. The Livias of the ancient world. And Livia is definitely one of the most powerful of them. She is the second wife of Octavian. They both had been married. They both have children by spouses before. And it is an interesting marriage. They are both, they deserve each other. I think that, I can put it that way without fear of contradiction. And she will be very useful. Living much, much longer than he, she will go on to be a master manipulator in power long after he dies in AD 14. Clearly, if she goes on to the age of 86. The family, the so-called Julio-Claudians, as we will soon see, is basically a combination of descendants of him and her. They had no children together. But each of them had children, and at times their children would have children after marriages, of course. And so this will create a most interesting tree, which I'm going to share with you in a few moments, with some very, very beautiful branches that I think take you to the Roman Arboretum and see this incredible tree. But that's Livia. This is one of the greatest actresses of all time. I don't know, you agree with? She was at this time, I'm not going to do a biography of film stars, but she was Mrs. Peter O'Toole at the time, believe it or not. Oh, did you? Sion Harris. I have never seen one meaner, nastier person. And then I thought, she's probably a really sweet, nice person who loves to crochet and send nice Hallmark cards. And yet, when I finished watching I, Claudius, woo. So that just shows you the power of great acting. And she's still going strong today. It's amazing to me. Very impressive. Can't say as much for him, but Livia was the conniver par excellence. She would have sons, nephews, grandsons. It would go on and on and on, and they would all more or less be in her authority. So that's how women had to operate if they were going to be powerful. It was not something they chose, but something that they were basically assigned that particular role. But they still had power, and of course was hated for it. Some aspects of his reign, he and Livia, and as far as we know, there were no other amours for either. He decided he would try to maintain, let's get back to good morals and good standards. We don't approve. We're going to talk more about this. But basically, we want people behaving. And more important, while they're behaving, we want them begetting. We want lots of fertility. Good fertility, not bad fertility. They're two different kinds. Good fertility means acceptable. Bad fertility means lots of frivolity about it. But this is like the good. The Julian laws. Oddly or ironically, Julia, who was his daughter by his first name, developed so bad a reputation for being libertine. And you think, is that bad? Yes, I could have used lots of other words, but I'm not going to. Libertine. And basically her father exiled her, sort of like to like an island, and said, now you just read and study, and and basically that's how, if you're trying to maintain this program of strict morality, it's difficult to have somebody who's, how did we say it in the old time, running around. I think that's the way that we said it in olden times. And so Julia was very ironic when you think about the sort of system he was maintaining. But in her defense, he did more or less force her into 3 marriages, and so she had a lot of reason to rebel, if I may say so. The Augustan legions, that is to say his armies, and we all know about demilitarizations. Frank, I know you probably thought a lot about World War I and World War II, the big ones. Well, the Augustan demilitarization was pretty big too when you think, when you think about those massive forces. And of course, they're not going and saying, well, like, gosh, we were just glad to have this opportunity, and would you send us a card sometime and say hi? No, I mean, we're expecting some veterans benefits here, right? So all of that's got to be taken care of. That's why we're going to have so many Roman veterans settling in Egypt. Because all of this, welcome to Octavian Acres and, you know, that kind of thing. Julia Street, and you have a little apartment, and I guess maybe meet Miss Egypt and settle down, you know. All in all, this seemed to be a very great program. Because remember, he is God here, literally. That is Augustus. Remember, he's a god in Egypt. You don't have to be shy. You don't have to just say, I'm just son of God, shucks. No. You could be the real McCoy right there. And so he can do what he jolly well pleases there in Egypt. He is more or less the Pharaoh, if you want to do it that way. In any event, one other thing he did that is very ominous for the future, he established for his own protection and security. And this is one of those, it seemed like a good idea at the time. You've heard that one? Yes, it did seem like a good idea. The Praetorian Guard would be the Roman military group you would want to be in if you had the choice. These aren't old veterans or something. These are, you know, young bucks. They're just coming up, and they say, oh, are you excited? What do you want us to do? Well, you all have such great evaluations. You did splendidly in boot camp, you know, that kind of thing. So, you mean I can be? Yes, you can be in the Praetorian Guard. Gosh, I thought I was going to be in an army in, you know, no offense, Germany or somewhere like Britain or somewhere like that. No, you're going to be Praetorian. Primo. This is the best. So, all of this is to say the Praetorian Guard, the elite force of Rome, stationed in the Roman area, and to be the source of much misadventure in the future, just to keep you in mind their Praetorian Guard. Here are some of these laws now. Just briefly, I wanted to, because I just thought they were such a scream. You see now, indirect foundation of concubinage. Oh my gosh, isn't that awful? And you say, why is it? Limited marriage across social class boundaries. So, if you can't marry just anybody, you can say, well, you know, I really care a lot about you, but I can't marry you. Would you like to be my concubine? Say, oh, how nice. Thank you very much. You know, so I get, yeah, I know. In our times, I'm not thinking you would find that very complimentary. Oh, shucks, me? But yes, that was a cause, because people would not be able to get married because of their social class differences, and that would create concubines. Second, adultery. Banishment. I mean, how far could they send you away? You want to go live with Persians? Maybe go live up in, Scotland? Ooh. Oh, and the food. It's just going to be bad. So, property confiscated. Fathers are permitted to kill daughters and the partners when they catch them. Husbands could kill wives, and they could divorce. No, they kill the partners. They're not going to kill the wife, so she gets to live. But she's divorced. And of course, with the consequences that would bring, the shame. Then finally, there is a whole program that he and Livia sponsor. I would call it a fertility prize. You basically, you just say, oh, Lord, I've been pregnant every year. Look at that, you know, and you think, wow, you most. And they say, we're so proud, you know, and you're just carrying them, you know, everywhere. Ooh. And so, this law they will have a whole program. They come in from the provinces to Rome to get awards. And here she is, the most pregnant Roman of them all, you know, that kind of thing. And so that's how underpopulated they were. But then you think about a century of civil wars, we got a lot of dead people. We need to get busy, okay? Fertile, okay. And bachelors, forget it. You are big losers. The idea of the bachelor, yeah, I'm just a swell. I go out every Saturday night and meet chicks. No. Well, their government's going to get you good for that. We want you to have lots of these little children and screaming and all of the clutter and all of that goes with the joys of parenthood, okay? Or else expect a bill from the Roman government. How far any or all of this worked is another story. Legislative morality is sometimes not too effective. But he and Livia were in the forefront. I mean, it was like a husband and wife team. And shucks, folks, we just love children, and we want you to love them. And honey, could you talk about this a little bit? You know, that kind of thing. I think it was quite a scheme. Because the idea, again, is Romans going back to the old days. Because you don't make laws about things unless there's a problem. And there was a problem. Lots of people didn't get married. Lots of people didn't want to have children. All kinds of elements here. Well, if they don't want to, we'll make them. You know, you got to have children. Get fertile right now. You know, that kind of thing. It's absolutely amazing. And it's so thankful that we have all these records that indicate that I'm not making all this up, that it's really true. That they did try to have these kinds of strange ideas. This is not a good map, and I admit it, but I wanted to show you a certain place in Germany. So go north, and you see northwest, right over the Rhine River, and there it is. And that would be a nice place to visit on your German trips. Okay, I recommend it to all my friends in the tourist industry. It is very, very interesting, and it has a great relevance to our discussion. Because the Roman peace is part of the tale of expansion. If the people under our Roman control are happy now, think how many more people could be happy, you see? I mean, why deny people, right? Why make them like, shucks, why can't we be part of this? What do we have to do to get under Roman control? Well, then the Romans decided to go past the Rhine. They'd been past the Rhine before. The Romans and Germans were very aware of each other. They didn't need a formal introduction. But they were very different in many respects, as is often the case with one people who are more or less aggressors and the other who are more, I guess I can still use the word primitive, and resistant to conquest. Well, that'll be Romans and Germans. In fact, in one of, well, I would have to say one of the greatest military encounters in Roman history, the Roman general Varus will actually lead a great Roman army, I believe 3 legions, no less, in a fight that he didn't expect to have. The person known to many as Hermann the German was by his Roman name called Arminius. And yes, he had a Roman name because he had been a captive as a Germanic chieftain's son. So he got brought up in Carroll. He knew his conjugations and his declensions, pluperfect, passive, and had to learn, instead of saying yaw and nine all the time, he learned all those conjugations and Latin. He said, I'm really sick of all this Roman stuff. I miss my German. So all of this will lead to what would be essentially his decision to return to his Germans and lead a great resistance against the Romans. Now you'll notice a reference to Tiberius. Tiberius was Livia's son, Caesar Augustus' stepson. And because I'm going to say some negative things about him later, I wanted to say something nice about him. You know, he was a great general, so let's give him that. He had had great success against Germans. He had pushed German tribes northward because presumably the Augustan plan was to exercise control. Remember, Julius Caesar had just decided, shucks, let's just let it go. Let's just forget it. We've got enough. We're busy. And he didn't know he was going to get killed, but, you know, he knew they had quite enough on him. Well, at this time, Tiberius will make a pretty significant movement into this part of Western Germany. And then came this famous, well, I'd have to just almost call it massacre of Romans by a German-led, what would we call him? He's German, but he's also got this Roman background. But inside him he's saying, yes, but I'm really, even as he's doing potaturus aum sum ss, he's going, but I'm really a German, not Roman, you know? It's, yeah. This is a bit hokey, but I like the idea of the Romans. You see the Romans there in force, and they just getting beat up. But the Germans don't have the nice uniforms either, see? So, but you see all the nice Roman equipment. 3 legions are destroyed. Count them, 3 legions there in one of the greatest defeats, so it's said, that the Romans experienced in their history. And believe you me, I wouldn't have wanted to be in that house with Livia and Augustus when the word came of that particular event. Whew. You know, it's kind of interesting, not only about Arminius, Hermann the German, is a very interesting figure in life and so forth. And he lived a few years after this. But you know what they always say, biblically, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So I guess we're not surprised that he is not going to turn to writing his memoirs or something like that, you know, make the circuit. But he will continue. Other German chieftains are probably jealous of him. You know how it is among these big shots. But Varus, again, wouldn't you be worried about your pension or worried about, you know, if I'm going to lose rank? So he just went and did away with himself right then and there, because I guess he didn't want to face the boss. So that was the end of Varus. We're in 89, 10, right around in there. Now, the great historian that we're going to note in a few minutes, Suetonius, said, Varus, give me back my legions. Like you wake up every, you know, in the middle of the night. Give me my legions. You know, you're thinking about all of those people who had been lost, all of those great Roman troops that had been lost. So it said he was so greatly affected that he neither cut his beard, his hair. Sometimes he would dash his head against the door. He observed the day of the disaster each day of one of sorrow and mourning. How Suetonius has the evidence for that, we don't know, but it doesn't surprise me or shock me. 3 legions? I mean, that's a lot of legions. That's a lot of forces, and it is a disgrace for Rome. As we now contemplate... Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you all were so... Okay, go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry. I may not.
I actually have a comment.
Oh, please do.
The fact of the matter is that because Octavian Augustus had so reduced the amount of troops that he had,
That's right.
that in fact the loss of 3 legions was a huge problem because, again, they only had approximately 160,000 troops ready for the entire Roman Empire of that time. So when you would lose 3 legions, you had faced the prospect not only of a big hole, but a big force of Germans coming down.
Visiting, yeah. Come down, taking a tour. And yes, that was a problem. And thank you, Frank. That is very true. And to be remembered that when you lose 3 legions and you've been on a demilitarization, you are very much, boy, you better go in some recruiting, some serious recruiting now. But you really, I mean, the time that they have to do that is very serious. As a matter of fact, it is probably true to say that Augustus said, that's it. It's been real. Love that expansion, love aggression, but hey, we're cooling our Roman. We're not going anywhere. We just love that Rhine and Danube. We like to sail in it. We like to swim in it. This is it. The idea, folks, is he just could not afford militarily to risk any more activities that would create further problems. I guess if he'd had endless military forces, he could have done differently. Now, the interesting thing, back to briefly to Hermann the German, this absolutely fascinates me. Until the 20th century, World War II, they played up Hermann the German in the textbooks for children. However, after World War II in West Germany, not so much, for obvious reasons. Until then, Arminius or Hermann was fighting the good fight for Germans against those nasty Romans. But West Germany's one thing. How about the German Democratic Republic, which some of you may remember, the late unlamented East Germany? Well, who do you think Hermann the German is then? He's socialism. And who is Octavian? Bourgeois. And where is the fight going? Take that, Banks. Take that, nasty capitalists. So, you get the idea that in a Marxist nation like East Germany, he was just sort of developed, as I believe they say in Filmland, that he could now occupy a role as, you don't like proletariat? Take that, capitalist, you know. So, what's that got to do with Roman history? Little. But I thought it was an interesting little turn to the 20th century. Oh my gosh. How much can we say about Virgil? We could say a lot. Many of I can just see your eyes are drooling, you're thinking about reading the Aeneid, in English or Latin, whichever turned you on. Or perhaps you didn't get enough, you were insatiable. You said, can I read other Virgil works? And your teacher no doubt said, what is wrong with you? But in case you had this devoted Virgilian teacher, you may have read other works about agriculture, or even the one that he supposedly predicted the birth of Jesus Christ. In fact, it is a work in which he predicts the birth of Octavian, on whose payroll he was. Yes, he was part of the entourage in what we call Augustan literature, of which many of us have not merely dabbled in, but went for long. The word suffering is not the word I was looking for. I was looking for enjoying, savoring, but that is another way of putting it. In any event, he definitely had the attention of Octavian and his family. Now here is a lovely painting. If you want to see it for real, go to London. It's in the National Gallery. You'll notice it was painted in 1787. You say, gee, just 2 years before 1789. Yes, French Revolution people, you sensed it. It is that style. And while you have time to contemplate this painting, we will now take a very, very short break, okay? And we will pick it up there as you contemplate the artwork. Boy, whew, tough one. I thought you would enjoy that because it looks like something by David, doesn't it? Do they paint in certain styles and groups by period? Because that seems so classic. I mean, there's so many versions of this, but I just love the colors and the. She wants to read Virgil's works to you in the original. I said you would be fine.
Oh, of course, anything.
Her knowledge. Oh, okay.
I only read the first 6 books in this.
Why did you stop? Did you?
The semester was over.
Well, I know, but that's why we have summers. What did you want, a Christmas break or something? That is so funny. What was it? She was telling me that, I can't remember, I do know. Her teacher was annoying.
Poisoning everybody, you know?
Oh, yeah, she did have.
We just watched that again. You can actually get Claudius at the library in.
Oh, is that right? I have it on DVDs when you finish The Americans.
You can get the DVD at the library in Auburn.
What's that? Yeah, I've got it. I'm ready.
Claudius.
Hello. I'm sorry.
I'm Karen Fake. My husband is Vince Ortiz, whom you met.
Yes, of course.
Phi Beta Kappa.
Yes, indeed.
But that's not why I came over here. I wanted to ask you about little Calpurnia. I mean, she was barren, right?
Now we're talking about.
Julius Caesar's wife.
Oh, yeah. But Caesar Augustus was actually his grandnephew, and he adopted him because that's the way they did that. But yes, he did not have We're going to get to a family chart in just a minute.
Serena came
since
out, I
either-
believe, in 72.
Well, Karen, I'm so glad to meet you. Yes, indeed. Oh, this is Vince Ortiz's wife. This is Donna Bohannon. She's also Phi Beta Kappa. We're all in it together. And so, in spirit, you have a spousal role to play, though. Okay. Yes. Well, I'm so glad to meet you. Yes. And Calpurnia was definitely barren, and
So he was married before, or he just didn't have any actual biologic children?
he didn't have a son. He had a daughter. And as I say, I'd rather let me just show you on the family tree, and I think.
Well, I just wanted to check on that fact.
And wasn't it so interesting? But it was so interesting to me that Octavian was the grand nephew, and yet he became the adopted son. So
I think it's a really good idea. I've got 2 rotten children, and I'd like to adopt some other adults.
get some good ones. Yeah, I know I think that's the way they would do. I think you'd have to have tryouts for who's going to get the real claims, because some of them were not. But that is so funny to me how that works. Because, yeah, Livia and Octavian are the perfect example of people who had to work with what they had, and they certainly have lots of marriages.
Do you put any credence in the theory that
Are you ready, Judy? Okay. Okay. All right, thanks. I hope. Okay. May I go ahead? Okay, my time. All right. The painting is going to demonstrate the reaction to Virgil's reading of his work. And I guess in a situation of that sort, a budding writer who was getting his income from favors of the imperial court would be a little nervous. You remember I told you in the last term about the fact that in order to explain how Rome was going to be great, Virgil had his hero Aeneas go meet with his father in the afterworld. That was Anchises. And not unlike Dante's Divine Comedy, this would allow people to, oh, hi, I didn't know you were here. Oh, it's great to see you. How have things been? You know, just damnable, you know, if you're in that section. But in this particular scenario, individuals are here, obviously, without any Christian moral or even any Greek ethical principles. They are here because Virgil wants to introduce them. And one of them would be Octavius' sons. He had actually been married to the daughter of Octavian. You say, but weren't they first cousins? Sometimes love starts right there at home. You just don't know. You don't know where it'll hit you. And so, let's just say that in this depiction, yeah, we're going to get a tree. And for right now, I just want you to see how it affects Octavia, because it's her son. Oh, yes, she poor thing. And I'm sure, and if you were the writer, would you say, oh my gosh, she doesn't like you? You know, I'll lose my pension, I'll lose all my, I was going to get some tips or something. But that is the idea that is being portrayed here. And believe me, they liked it. And you see, sweet Livia, who may or may not have used some here. Would you like one of my special beverages? Maybe that was Livia, or maybe she was just the sweet sister-in-law portrayed here. I'll let you guess that one. In any event, Virgil definitely drew a reaction from his, shall we say, imperial audience. In addition to Virgil, we never forget Livy, and we have talked about Livy last time, and we'll come to Livy in terms of famous stories of Rome, basically history has lots of interesting anecdotes, and his version of Roman history was very popular, even if it could be a little sad when we look back and think he was very cognizant of all the problems Rome was facing. Ovid brings questions. What's a man who writes things like he writes doing at a court which is trying to bring back traditional morality? Well, for someone who writes the Book of Love, which is not about dating tips for young people, it's a little R-rated, if you get my drift, the Book of Love. And it was definitely, Octavian was furious, because I'd have to say, if you want to know the truth, Octavian was a bit of a prude. And the work was definitely not acceptable. Well, I won't get into detail. I'll let you look it up. And just yes. Mm-hmm. But it's not some beautiful Romeo and Juliet. Oh, I just love you. It's, and all that. Mm-hmm. It's R. It's definitely R. It's not even PG. R. Now, let's just think about this. Go to Rome and see it. And how often students of Latin who've read this, the story of Daphne and Apollo, and what do you do when you don't want to date a god? This is what basically the story is. And you look at Daphne and you say, how is she not going to have to go out with Apollo? She's going to become a tree. And you say, there are a lot of great things about being a tree. Especially, I can avoid Apollo. And that's the whole point of Daphne and Apollo, that her father was a god, and so he said, arboretums are nice. So here we go. And that's Daphne and Apollo, escaping Apollo. And again, it is a very, very beautiful work. And It's the Borghese, one of the great museums that you may wish to visit. But it is exquisite. And there, of course, Bernini, that many of you will know from your own studies. Now, Suetonius, because he is only one of the great historians that we read when we study this period. You'll notice his death date. He fits in perfectly, time-wise. He, I think it fair to say, has lots of hairy dog stories about this one and that one. And the reason that I'll be telling you so many tales of, I was going to say what's good, but there's not much of that. What's bad is because of Suetonius, whose works are filled with these kinds of lascivious incidents and tales of debauchery. He's a major one, as is Dio Cassius. He's Greek, but as a Greek, he's kind of a Romanophile. And there are those, you know, we're proud to be Greek, I love Homer, you know, that kind of thing. But I've adjusted. And not all Greeks feel this way. But he does. 80 books, we don't have them all, so don't get excited. There are a limited number that have been retrieved over time. But this work goes on, and it does, he died in 235, so it does go on providing us with more detail of these rulers called the Julio-Claudians and their reigns. I think he finally, at least from what we have, goes on till the late 2nd century. But here's the one, the great one. Because if you were to go out with just a random Latin class and you were to say, which one do you love the most? This may be the one that most of your 9th and 10th graders would name. I don't know, I can't prove that, but I'm just saying. Tacitus. We know him. Some of you will remember I talked about him in terms of medieval understandings of German people in the Germania. He wrote about his father-in-law, a great general in the British campaign called the Agricola. And the one that we're going to talk most about, the histories, which give his sometimes biting ideas about Roman emperors and the sadness with which he reflects, and bitterness, with which he reflects on the Roman Empire. Do you remember the phrase I gave you earlier? They made it a desert and they called it a peace. That's from Tacitus. He is no imperialist by any means. And he thinks the emperors and all of their carryings on are rather disgusting. He himself hails from what I would call the senatorial aristocracy, the class of people who think of themselves and the good old days, we were the ones, and our morals and our ways were the one. Now, somebody asked me about this. The family of Caesar Augustus, because it does get complicated, so get ready. These folks did like to get married. Now, Augustus had no sons. His daughter, Julia, had 3 husbands. But out of all of it, her sons died when they were children. So he would have been without his wife, Livia a little short of people growing up. And he did live on till 14. So he did live a long time, but of course, how do you know? He eventually had to recognize as heir Livia's son, but not the son that he liked. In other words, he liked one stepson and disliked the other. The one he liked died. So that leaves one, but nobody else. And that is Tiberius. Now, I told you earlier I was going to say something nice about Tiberius, and you heard this before your break. Okay? So you've already heard the nice Tiberius. This is the Tiberius. He may have needed counseling, because I'm not sure either his mother or stepfather liked him. In fact, I'm not sure anybody really liked him. But he was the one left. And as Octavian said when he made him his heir, this I do for the sake of Rome. You say, wow, that's a pinging endorsement, not a ringing endorsement. It's a very tiny one. It's not like, wow, kid, you're the greatest. Tie man, you're going to be emperor after me. No. It's like, okay. But just bear that in mind. The feeling that Caesar Augustus must have died very unhappily, I think would be clear knowing that if he did care about his legacy, which is, some would say, not a factor, but if he did care about it, then he was concerned that Tiberius simply would not be able to maintain it. This is what I would do if I didn't like you so much. But because I'm bucking for a pay raise and good evaluations, you're getting the mini tree. See, that's the kind of treatment you get. I wanted to give you the big one, but I don't want to hurt you. Okay, you're fine people. Okay, so this is the little tree. Okay, and this is all you need to know without getting hurt. Okay, because once you get into that other one, you could bore people at parties, okay? Yeah, I mean, they could say, do you want to know more about the genealogy? Say, yeah, I got to get a freshener here. Good to have seen you. Yeah. But let's see now, there's Julius, and there's his sister, and you'll see there are no heirs under Julius, Calpurnia, or otherwise. So, everything is coming from his sister Julia, which makes it even more ironic, doesn't it? Then you think it's her grandson who is going to be our Octavian. And then it will be from his stepson, which is Tiberius, that then will come future heirs. And this is the short one. See, think how ugly it could have been, horrible it could have been. It would, very painful. And you think the big letters, and you think, oh, here are all my favorites. Caligula, Nero, yes. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. In one little tree just for you. Now, let's go back, shall we, to Julia. You remember he had a daughter, Julia, by his first wife, who was Scribonia, but it doesn't matter. Julia, and she will have 3 husbands and will have various children. At the end, now this is what people will do. He will, that is, Octavian, Augustus, will say to Tiberius, he said, Tiberius, I want you to marry my daughter. Well, I'm already married. I'm really happy. We're having a great marriage. I'm sorry, but we need you to get rid of her and marry my daughter. Are there any questions? I mean, marry. So they marry. Tiberius and Julia, in a loveless, very unhappy marriage at the end of Octavian's years. I can't imagine they actually lived together. But that will be Julia 1 to make it easy, because we'll come up with a Julia 2. Yeah, to make it even more complicated. We'll be back. But this is just round 1 of family tree talk in terms of these Julio-Claudians. So called because of Julius Caesar and Claudius, the ancestor of Livia's family. That's why they call it the Julio-Claudians. And you remember one of these emperors named Claudius, and more of him shortly. This dynasty will go on till AD 68. You know, you think it would just go on and on and on, but no. It's relatively short-lived, but during those years, they live life to the fullest and make it somewhat unpleasant for those around them. But there is, of course, much more to the story. Tiberius was a creature of Livia. Remember, once stepdaddy's dead, Livia has a period of mourning or whatever, and then she moves in, she says, now you know, kid, mother knows best. And so she will become the ruling force in his reign. And he's one of the longest reigning rulers in the history of the empire. That's the truth. It's unbelievable. But he lives long. He's not happy, but he lives a long time, which, as you know, is not the same thing. He would become, with great reason, somewhat paranoid. I mean, if you had a mother as a poisoner, I think I would be kind of nervous. Mommy, what are you fixing tonight? You know, that kind of thing. But I think around him there were a number of plots. And because of his paranoia and possibly other issues, he decided to move in a beautiful spot to sort of get away from it all. And I finally located where it is. I always wondered, you know, you tell things, but you never really feel it. And here it is. We just celebrated Good Friday and Easter. It's kind of interesting to think that the development of Christianity is just beginning in this period. And since I'm coming into that in detail later, we will let it go for now. How about that? That was the site up there of his villa. A nice home away from home, one would think, where he could be there between Rome and Naples. And you just betcha it had better security than The Sopranos. I mean, because, you're always thinking about, I wonder if someone would like to kill me. I don't know, but I think there were already plots within the Praetorian Guard. People who have ideas. And the tradition of generals with coup d'etat plans. I could be doing a better job. I just need to kill him. Poison, swords. I would just let me choose the way. He can die, though. Yeah. There's so many. Yeah. So, all of this is to say Tiberius spent many years of his reign in sort of self-chosen exile, but in a very beautiful spot between Rome and Naples. Then, I've got to go back to a table so we can see where he comes from. There he is. Now you see Augustus, you see Julia, and then you see all of these children from Julia. Agrippina, you see Agrippina there? And you see Germanicus? Anybody see Germanicus? Well, Germanicus was one of the children that both of the Augustus and Livia loved so much, but he was killed in battle. But he had a cute little boy. All of the soldiers thought he was so cute, and you know what they had? A kiddie's outfit. I'm going to be a little Roman soldier. And everybody said, oh, why don't we call him Little Boots? Caligula. Yes. That's why I waited to say the word, because I realized you would have that reaction. Because I wanted to build up the cute, you see all those pictures of cute children. And you think, God, well, why do they become such wretched adults? But they're cute when they're little. And he was cute. I'm sure he was very cute. And he will now become ruler. And he sort of becomes ruler. He's a teenage boy. So he's got the right blood. He's got the right line. His father is a famous general. They come from Livia's family, as you can see. So there is every reason. You see, going up, when you look at Caligula's sister, do you see, in fact, that you can trace it all the way back to his sisters being, that is, Octavian's sister being married to Mark Antony way back when? So there's lots of nice blood combos, if you want to view it that way. But now we have someone who's special. Little Boots. Or Gaius. We have more, and a short reign, I might add, 37 to 41, so he doesn't get a lot of time to develop and evolve as a strong ruler. But he does enough. He is the grandnephew of Tiberius. And again, to remind you, his father would have become ruler and would have been a great one had he lived. His father, however, died as a great commander. What happened to him is a matter of conjecture. Some of the writers say, he was just had a little fever, and he was a perfectly normal, happy child. And after the fever broke, he arises as some sort of irrepressible monster who is into all kinds of sadistic activity. And that will help us understand the brevity of his reign. He lacked the ability to reach out, politically speaking. He probably got rather poor imperial evaluations, I suspect, rate my emperor. I don't think he did well. As you may have seen in Hollywood epics, both grade A and grade B ones, and there are both, he would be dispatched by a group that I'm sure thought they were doing this for a good cause, the betterment of Rome. He would be simply slain by the Praetorian Guard. This is not necessarily the first time they will try to act. And we are aware again of the role of the military in Roman history. Had Caligula done anything specifically against the Praetorian Guard, or had they just sort of taken a vote and decided he was a loser and needed to die? It's hard to say. But as I say, it was not a long reign. Now, let's consider for ourselves what the sources tell us. Even in the midst of his diversions while gaming or feasting, this savage ferocity, both in his language and actions, never forsook him. Persons were often put to torture in his presence while he was dining or carousing. A soldier who was as adept in the art of beheading used at such times to take off the heads of prisoners who were brought in for that purpose. And you think, well, now that truly is disturbing, unless he was doing anatomical experiments or something of the sort. But that was a charitable judgment. At Puteoli, at the dedication of the bridge which he planned, as already mentioned, he invited a number of people to come to him from the shore, then suddenly threw them headlong to the sea, thrusting them down with poles and oars. Those, to save themselves, had gotten hold of the rudders of the ships, throats cut. Okay, so he needed to die, and he did, and that was the end of him. Now, in our 1976 PBS favorite, we understand there was a successor waiting in the wings, his uncle, who would be one of Livia's nephews. And this was Claudius. Claudius, and of course, it doesn't hurt that you have John Hurt and Derek Jacobi in the performances, the two big stars of that day and any. Claudius was part of a series of books written in the 30s by Robert Graves. Why Robert Graves chose to write about this particular emperor, I don't know, but I do know that for him, this shy, well-educated man who became the Emperor Claudius was a subject of fascination. So he wrote two books, I, Claudius, and Claudius the God. The story of Claudius is the story of a man who never dreamt he would be emperor. He had an interest in history. He studied Etruscan ruins. He was someone who, because he had a stammer, tended to be a bit shy. But that is not to say that he was not an individual who did not enjoy the pleasures of this world. When I say quiet and shy, learned and devoted to studies, you probably are thinking, oh, shucks, I don't think I'll have a drink. I just think I want to go study some of my books and learn more conjugations or more tenses. But in fact, Claudius also majored in the study, well, let me call it Woman 101. Yes, Claudius was very interested in the other sex, and he spent quite a bit of time. He enjoyed marriage. He must have. He married quite a few times. So wedding bells sounded like an alarm clock, you know, as they say. It was just quite often, and he apparently was not an individual who was angelic, but he was certainly better than his nephew. Now, the scene, of course, is that of the youthful but absolutely mad Caligula being run through, and then the Praetorian Guard saying, is there someone else in here? And here is, hey, I was just getting back to some Etruscology. Can I help you? Yeah, Aren't you the uncle? You want to be emperor? That's pretty much the way it was done. There was not a great deal of preparation. But I suspect that there was enough fear to make him decide, I think I want to do this. Once he got into it, he liked it very much. It's good to be emperor. And so during those years, he would be very busy. Apparently, in the time of Caligula, plans had already been made for a possible campaign in Britain. Claudius went on with it. He began initiating plans to develop a military government of sorts. His private life was not pleasant. Among the marriages, the final one was to a niece. They had both been married before, and I don't know, there was a reunion or Thanksgiving, I don't know. But they decided, you've had some bad ones, I've had some bad ones, let's get together. And she said, oh, baby, you're the best. I mean, Uncle Claudius. And so, yes, they are married, but she had plans. Her name was Agrippina. And as I say, he had been down the altar before. He was not a newbie, okay? Like, oh, what do I say then? You know? So, again, the poison. There is strong reason to believe that he was not old, but he just wasn't going fast enough. Agrippina had a full agenda, did not involve him. He needed to clear out, and the poison takes time, but it works every time, you know. So, that's our Agrippina, because there was a little boy said, Mommy, Mommy, when is my turn? Soon, dear. Uncle Claudius doesn't look so well, does he? You know? So that's how Claudius' reign will end. You know, the guy he probably didn't need to be married so often, and he sure shouldn't have been dating nieces, okay? So that was part of the poison. Was Agrippina really that evil? Oh, I think so. And she deserved Nero. She deserved him. You know some people who have wretched children and you think, yeah, they had it coming. This is big time Agrippina. She was the mother of mothers. Now, the British campaign. You know I love this. And I thought, well, this map is just one of the best. You know, it's always like, where can I get a new map? Always looking for the best maps. And this will be one of the Romans' most recent and greatest successes. Like many a military campaign, it's all great at first. Rome, Britain, you're putting up the Roman flags, you know, down there in the south and think, yeah, we got it. Then a funny thing happens in the Midlands. It kind of slows down. And those British tribes began to unite together against Roman authority. So this will go way after our period that we are covering now, the Julio-Claudians. But in Claudius' time, the campaign will begin and will enjoy great success in the southernmost part of Britain. And I know those of you who've been there will know it has wonderful weather, very hospitable. And so I'm sure the Romans were just as happy as could be because, you know, while they were strangers in a sense, Caesar had conquered Gaul, Julius, and so they had some contact with Romans, but it won't last. Nero, he will enjoy much of this going on in his period, not personally, but as a ruler in this period. Now, he will end our Julio-Claudian period, and he will end it again, not unlike his predecessor Caligula, in unpleasant circumstances, much of which he brought about on his own. He is said to have been a prodigy, musically speaking, and it is said that he liked to perform and he enjoyed a receptive audience. People were not allowed to leave his performances. Have you ever, Julie, I talked to Julie before, and she was saying she'd left a concert. I mean, sometimes people get very upset when people leave. I mean, you know, think how I would feel, you know. But even in my wildest fantasies, I can't imagine doing anything like Nero, like having guards posted at all of the entrances, and even pregnant women and having babies during my lectures. I mean, no one was allowed to leave. You could just lie down over there and have it. I mean, it's not, nobody is going to miss part of my concert. So he was supposed to have been a very talented musician. His role as far as the Fire and Christians we will speak about. But mainly we are interested, or at least I am, because of the fact Agrippina had done so much. And again, think Hallmark in May. How do we write things to this wonderful person who has done so much for us? And you think, what would Nero have said to Agrippina? Well, while he was young, I think he said, gee, Mama, you're so wonderful. I'm sorry about Uncle Claudius, but things change. And he says, Mother, I'd rather do it myself. And she says, you need my help, sonny boy. And finally, there's a dispute. And Agrippina, a.k.a. Mommy, will know she went too far. His life was not only a rebellion against her authority, but also a life, as that of many young people, of, sad to say, I've had some students like this, who have committed themselves to debauchery. They miss class. They want to be there in their heart, but the desire to be near a bathroom is stronger than the desire to listen to me. And that hurts. That hurts both of us. But that is the pain of debauchery. And he lived one. Boy, did he ever. I don't know, after previous family members, if the debauchery is going to mess things up for him. I think it's more because he reached the stage that he could not take advice from anyone who could have saved him from himself. And this had to do with the power of a mother. This selection coming from Suetonius tells us he was so much offended that he endeavored to expose her to public resentment by frequently pretending a resolution to quit the government and retire. Soon afterwards, he deprived her of all honors and powers, took away from her the guards, banished her from the palace, persecuted her in every way he could contrive, employed people to harass her with lawsuits, disturbed her in her retirement with the most scurrilous and abusive language. Talk you would have never heard in Latin class, because we didn't have that kind of ugly language. But being terrified with her menaces and violent spirit, because I think Agrippina would, say, look, kid, you don't mess with Mama. He resolved upon her destruction and thrice attempted it by poison. Yeah, doesn't always work. Finding, however, that she had previously secured herself by antidotes, she contrived machinery by which the floor over her bed might be made to fall upon her while she was asleep. Ah! Like that. Could you imagine just thinking up stuff? Mommy needs to die. This design miscarrying likewise through the little caution used by those who were in the secret. His next stratagem was to construct a ship which could easily be shivered in hopes of destroying her either by drowning. Unfortunately, she'd had swimming lessons. Darn it. But, you know, she was swimming. I'm coming, son, I'm coming. It's all right, Mama's here for you. Yeah. Under color of a pretended reconciliation, he wrote her an extremely affectionate letter inviting her to a resort to celebrate. He had given private orders to the captains of the galleys that were to bring her to shadow the ship in which she had come, but in such manner that it might appear to be done accidentally. He prolonged the entertainment, and he took her to the vessel in a very cheerful mood, parting with her, kissed her breast, after which he sat up very late at night, waiting to learn the issue of the project. But receiving information that everything had occurred contrary, she saved herself by swimming. You never know when you'll need it. Aren't you glad you had it in college? Those PE classes are going to pay off. He then commanded the freeman to be seized and put in chains under pretense of his having been employed by his mother to assassinate him. At the same time, ordering her to be put to death and giving out that to avoid punishment for her intended crimes, she had laid violent hands upon herself. I mean, this sounds like something out of one of these murder television shows, doesn't it? Other circumstances are related on good authority is that when he went to view her corpse and handling her limbs, pointing out her blemishes, noted other points, and he grew thirsty during the survey and called for drink. This is a troubled child, okay? Okay, yeah, I think we have passed counseling, okay? I don't think that's going to work. And again, the Praetorian Guard took a vote and said, all in favor of Nero dying say yes. And of course, there were no dissenters. How would it be done? Well, they never got the chance. Apparently, he wanted to commit suicide, but he just couldn't get up quite, you know, that moment. So he had his servant kill him. And then they killed the servant. That was all in 68 and basically brings this Julio-Claudian period to an end. Now, before we leave this period, I can't forget this wonderful philosopher. If you had to have a job as teacher and resident counselor, wouldn't you want to be a Stoic? Because the Stoic philosophy was what Seneca is famous for. He wrote, but he also worked with Agrippina in rearing Nero, such as he was reared, and in dealing with him educationally. And he worked well until it's sort of like when they get you, you know, third-year review, and they say, I'm afraid you're just not going to get tenure. And you're thinking, gee, I think I probably need to end my career at Nero's court. Unfortunately, he didn't get the chance. Nero, after Mother was gone, Seneca and other advisors were on the list of overdue deaths because they were associated with Agrippina. And of course, that gives me another chance for great art. Seneca, in order, well, I don't know if it's great, I'm no critic, but I liked it. Seneca decided to have a big party, and then he jumped in the tub and slit his wrists. And while I guess, whatever is going on, it takes time. And so all of the Stoic students are around him so they can have another philosophy lesson. So they can talk about the meaning of suffering and so forth. And he says, you work for Nero, you work for Nero, see how you feel. So all of this was going on during the last days of Nero. And it became, and you see this at the Prado, by the way, if you're in Madrid. I just came across it and I thought it was done by a Spaniard, this particular work. And it's supposed to indicate the idea of how Seneca would die. And again, if you were on the immediate Neronian payroll, it's very difficult just to resign and say, you know, these have been great years, sir. I really appreciate all you've done, and I'm so glad. I just want to get back to teaching, grading blue books. I don't know. It's just, but this has been wonderful. But no, I don't think there's any way to get out but in this particular method, or else Nero would have had a way. That is the end of the Julio-Claudian family, because Nero, despite all of his debauchery, did not provide any offspring. There were members of the family, no doubt, hoping that someone would ask for them to take over. But we are at the stage in Roman history, the power will go to the strongest. And it will take 4 generals fighting amongst each other before there will be a new ruler for Rome. That, in other words, is part of this particular period, which I find very interesting when you think. Now, the Great Fire, which is illustrated here, it's known about, I've called it probably a form of urban renewal. Even though, you know, Hollywood, Rome is always very, very beautiful. I think there were some sections in Gladiator that did show us a little slummy sections. We may have had some idea, but we definitely do in this particular case. A large portion of the Roman populace died in these particular events, but I doubt that Nero suffered as a result of those deaths. And being interested in architecture and urban development, as Nero was, between rounds of debauchery and murder, he wanted to rebuild Rome, and so he and his successors will work on that project with great diligence. We will pick it up there next time, and thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.